I want you guys to take a moment and think about a time long, long ago, back in the halcyon days of 2015. Oh, how green the pastures were back then, how beautiful life seemed. Little did we know the darkness that would descend upon us in the coming years. But back then, naive as we were, we used to play Counter-Strike for the fun of it. We used to play the game because we enjoyed it. And back then, we would get through a game, and if we lost, we wouldn't assume that everybody on the enemy team was a cheater, because back then, there were less cheaters. And when I think of that time of Counter-Strike, one thing stands out to me, and that was the height of the best eco weapon to ever exist, the UMP 45. If you guys remember, the power this weapon used to strike into the lobbies we played in never was a full buy safe, because a UMP could turn into a mini AK at any range. It was truly beautiful. Never did the CG economy feel very far behind when you had the UMP in the back pocket. And then, in a move that would start a butterfly effect that has led us to the point where the MP9 and the MAC-10 are intolerable, Valve nerfed the UMP. And since then, it's been a forgotten weapon, a bygone relic of a better time. But for some reason, as I have noticed watching through the recent major cycle and the recent tournaments, the UMP is making a comeback at the pro level. So, without any obvious changes, nothing that's come through on Valve's side, why are people starting to use the UMP again when everyone considered it to be bad before? Is there a reason that you should be using the UMP? Will it finally take over the throne that the MP9 and the MAC-10 have sat upon rudely, inexorably for all these years? I don't know, but we're here to investigate, we're here to learn, and we're here to understand why the UMP has suddenly made a return to the meta. So if that sounds interesting to you, make sure you guys take a second, leave a like, leave a comment down below, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It helps out immensely in the YouTube algorithm, and with my goal of reaching 1,000 subscribers as fast as possible, we're in the home stretch, the last 90 subscribers to get me there, so make sure you do it. Make sure you guys also consider becoming a channel member. For $5 a month, you can support me directly, and what I do here, gain access to exclusive emblems, emotes, a shout out at the end of every video, as well as more stuff coming soon. And lastly, make sure you check me out on Twitch. I stream Sunday through Friday, 8:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, link in the description down below. Come drop me a follow. And let's get right into the video. First things first, let's talk about stats and what kind of role the UMP is supposed to play in the current meta. The UMP comes in with the second lowest price amongst SMGs at $1,200. It has the highest base damage at 35 damage to the body. It has some of the longest range among SMGs. Alongside the MP7 and the P90, it has some of the longest two-shot headshot range, and while its slower than average fire rate means it's worse up close than some of its counterparts, it maintains some of the best DPS at range in the class. So combining these attributes with its price point, I think the goal of the UMP is to offer a mid-range SMG option to our arsenal. It gives you an option between the MP9 and say a FAMAS on the CT side, or the Glue on the T side, when you want an SMG's mobility and ease of use, but you want something that's going to hold its range a little bit better, be a little bit easier to use than spray controlling the MAC-10 or the MP9. Now it is fair to say right out the gate, it's not being used more than the MP9 or the MAC-10, and it's certainly not better than these weapons in isolation. What I think it does is it offers its own unique niche that neither the MAC-10 or the MP9 can replicate. In fact, I think most of us can agree that the MAC-10 and the MP9 might be a little too hot right now. If Valve were going to be making any kind of nerfs to the weapon balance of the game, I feel like those weapons would be first on the chopping block. And if that's the case, I would expect the UMP to slot in as the best overall SMG the moment that happens. So if the MP9 and the MAC-10 are superior, why are pros starting to use the UMP here and there? I think again it boils down to that role fulfillment aspect. Teams like Virtus.pro tend to play a slower overall game, so in situations where they would be buying SMGs like after a pistol round win, they like the ability of the UMP to allow them to sit back more because they don't want to take MAC-10s or MP9s and play at 9,000 miles an hour. It just doesn't fit their playstyle. As for why I think the UMP is cropping up right now, I think it's because the game has gone to the point where players are starting to look around the margins to try and get an advantage, and then also the game stability is improved in such a way that the UMP doesn't feel like garbage anymore. I don't know if you guys can cast your mind back to the launch of CS2. If you used the UMP ever at the start of CS2, you'd remember just how garbage the gun used to feel. With some of the hit reg issues, the server issues that were happening at the time, the UMP being a slow firing weapon that really relies on you hitting headshots, it just felt so awful to use that there was never any point in bringing it. So I believe most people, pros included, set it to the side, they focus on the developing meta, where the MP9 and the Mag-10 were so strong that they could actually strike into proper gun rounds if you couldn't afford a rifle, and then everyone just kind of moved on. So with that, let's talk a little bit about how to use the UMP and what makes it so good. So booting up a good old recoil trainer map, we can see the UMP has one of the easiest spray patterns in the entire game. It's mostly pulling in a curve, starting at the left, and then ending at the bottom right, which means more or less your first 15, 17 bullets, you can pull down and to the left and be pretty well off. You're going to hit a lot on center mass doing that. And when you compare that to the MP9, it's just night and day. The MP9 has one of the most random, hard to use spray patterns in the entire game, which is why you see a lot of pros stop after 10 bullets and start tapping with it. Mag dumping the MP9, unless you are barrel stuffing people, is an absolute chore. Now, the one definite downside to the UMP, you have to keep this in mind. The MP9 and the Mag-10 have broken how we approach using submachine guns. They should not be as accurate as they are while jumping, so it's very, very good to use an MP9, wheel around the corner at Mach 1, jump around it, and surprise the motherfucker behind it. If you do it with the UMP, you're going to have a bad time. It's a weapon that again plays more like a rifle, so you want to play a little more stationary. You can still move and shoot, but it's more like you're going to jiggle peek a corner and then crouch, move, and spray. It's like using a rifle that has more forgiving walking and accuracy, if that makes sense. If you start jumping around corners with the UMP, is just no bueno. It's not going to work. Don't do it. Stop it. Alright, now it's not a LionHeartZ video if I don't talk a little bit about economy, and today I'm going to talk about where I'm using the UMP, how I look at it in the broader scope of the economic game, and how we can apply it. If you cast your minds back a few months, I made a great video about the MP7. Now for me, I feel like the MP7 was flying under the radar as this great off-meta option because you could use it on low buys or full buying around your teammates when you don't have enough money for M4s, especially on the CT side, and the MP7 is a great weapon that supplements the rifle role while giving you SMG capabilities. Still really stand behind all those opinions in that video. It's just more and more I'm starting to lean on the UMP to supplement that MP7 role. I think it does it very well. They're very comparable weapons, and I get to save $300. So in those situations where I need to buy around my teammates, I have more room for utility, more room for kits. $300, it's not a lot, but it's certainly not nothing. It's the difference between having all of your smokes and missing a key piece of utility. So I do like it a lot. The only hurdle I'm seeming to have at the moment is that the UMP takes a little bit of adjusting to in terms of playstyle. Again, I think we've gotten very comfortable with SMGs being super free when you strafe around the corner at Mach 1. You're not worrying about counter strafing or where your accuracy is going, but the UMP is not as forgiving. You need to play a little more stationary, but you're definitely rewarded for it if you play to the UMP's rules, in my opinion. When the weapon works, it works really well. So with the last little bit of this video, let's bring it back to the pro scene. What was the UMP developed to be a significant part of the meta? Well, right now in the post-major cycle, IEM Chengdu is going on. It's the next biggest tournament since the major is concluded. A lot of top teams there, FaZe, Team Liquid, Cloud9, G2, etc. And watching those games, I have seen some spotted UMP usage amongst the crowd. Again, it's not significant. It's not even enough to when you go look at the stats for these events for it to even pop up on HLTV. So it's somewhere in the less than 3% usage range based on those numbers. Again, I think the key thing is what is going to change in the game in the coming months. I think it's pretty clear that we're heading towards some massive updates in the post-major cycle. Valve want to balance the game now that the biggest tournament is over. And I think right on the chopping block, alongside maybe the auto shotty, I can see the MP9 getting kicked down a little bit alongside the Mag-10. These weapons feel like they're out of band. And looking at some of the stats under the hood, the MP9 is juiced in just about every stat category compared to its competitors. It has weirdly high damage falloff range. It holds its damage out much farther than other SMGs. It keeps its headshot multiplier higher than other SMGs, all while having best in class rate of fire, being dirt cheap, and being really easy to use when you just run forward at people. So maybe pros are starting to anticipate that, and they're starting to learn how to use other weapons that are going to go up in viability in the wake of these potential nerfs. I don't know, it's hard to say. Maybe at the end of the day, again, it's just experimentation and wanting to try something new. But regardless, I thought it was really interesting. I wanted to cover it. I love the UMP, and I've been loving using it again, so I thought I'd bring that to you guys if you weren't paying attention. Maybe it helps you out in your games and you find something new to use as well. Make sure you guys leave a comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Shout out to Furley, Justin, and Jesse, my channel members. Thank you guys so much for helping out. And yeah, we'll be back soon with another video. You guys have a wonderful day. Peace.